As a New Age minister, definitely breaking the mold when it comes to your father's rock of ages, so to speak. Every single week he capitalizes on the popularity of social media websites like Facebook, MySpace, and Twitter. He's using that particular medium to talk to more than 35,000 followers every single week. That's how he spreads the gospel. He spreads the gospel that way because he not only believes that God is in the church, he also believes that God is in technology. Please welcome, I'd like to call him a 21st century pastor, Dr. Jamal Bryant. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm appreciative.
Absolutely. You and I were just talking, a lot of people thought that social media was a passing fancy, but when you think about what Facebook and Twitter has been able to do just in the last 2 to 3 years.
Yes, it's redefined life as we know it. Even telephone conversations have been minimized because people are tweeting and texting. And regrettably, because society changes every 20 years, but church changes every 40. The church is behind the trends. Even when you look at church websites, they're still 10 years old beyond where it needs to be. And so I think the church really is going to have to wake up out of a technological coma and get on board as to where it is trends are going.
Why do you think you were able to embrace it so quickly and do so well with it?
I think because I'm part of a generation that ushered it in, and so it is not anything extra. It's become the normative. I remember growing up when three-way calls first came out, and people didn't know how to work it right, so you still had somebody else on the phone while you went into another conversation. I think the same bumping as we grow has happened, and so I've become a part of a generation knowing my children may get to high school and not know textbooks. Just says how fast technology is moving.
Absolutely, and speaking of the generations before you, you are in the ministry by no mistake. I think perhaps born into it with your father being a bishop and your mother being a reverend, but you kind of carved your own niche, so to speak. I was reading the article, I believe it was Essence Magazine did an article about you. I think they titled it From GED to PhD. You're a Morehouse man, but most people don't realize that road to Morehouse was really bumpy for you. You dropped out of high school.
I don't know if I dropped out or I was escorted out, but
really?
I was kicked out of high school and went and got a GED. Only after when I failed out of the 11th grade, my parents sent me to Liberia for a year in West Africa. My dad is a Peace Corps alum. So he sent me for a bro mitzvah, as it were, to go find myself.
Bro mitzvah, okay.
To try to find myself in Liberia, started by former slaves. It's an interesting place because they have no public schools. So everybody has to pay their tuition as they go. So you have 15-year-olds in the 8th grade, not because of retention, not because of poor testing skills, but that's when their family had the money for them to go. And my classmates couldn't understand how I was failing school for free. And they were working just for the privilege. And so that really gave me an eye-opener to really the significance of education and the value thereof.
Speaking of the value, I think that was a huge part of your ministry, if you will, and tenure with the NAACP. You were able to reach the masses, our younger generation, perhaps by that experience you had in Liberia. Why is education the key for you?
It's very critical because I realize it's the passport. It's not the divide between Booker T and W.E.B. Du Bois. Is the merging of that you have to use your mind and your hands. And I think that we've got to give all of our young people a valuable option to know that you've got to go to school. If you only get to the 11th grade, you can't compete on a global stage. That even now, bachelor's degree is equivalent to a high school diploma. And so we've got to keep pushing and stretching our young people beyond the normative. It was Benjamin Mays that said you got to run faster or forever be left behind.
Absolutely, and from Morehouse to the White House.
Yes.
Morehouse paved the way for you to really have a voice also in the Obama administration. It really struck me last night when you were preaching to the masses along the Gulf Coast here about Obama's health care.
Yes.
And we're a generation of people who's living longer, and many of us who are living longer are on more prescription medicine.
Yes.
What is it? What is your mantra? What are you trying to get accomplished with the Obama administration when it comes to just helping a lot of the people that you are speaking to through Twitter and through Facebook each and every day.
I think it's a poor dichotomy that we are one of the wealthiest nations with the poorest health care, that we are the lowest standard for any leading democratic nation. I think we rate 12th or 14th, but we're number one in militaristic strength. It says that our priorities are out of place. And so I think what President Obama has championed is right on point, is what all four of his predecessors were not able to accomplish. Is a Herculean feat for any president, especially in their first time and through opposition. And it's regrettable. March 27th, they'll be having to defend it in front of the Supreme Court. Just the very thought that you got to fight for our parents to be healthy, for our babies to get inoculation shots, is really a disgrace in the wealthiest place in the world. And we keep sending vaccines to Africa and sending pills of malaria to Somalia, but people right here at home are dying because they don't have affordable health care.
And you've also written a book that's kind of taking you through a cathartic path.
Yes. And
that you've discovered who Jamal Bryant is. I think your book, again, World War Me. Why that title?
Yes.
And what was the inspiration behind that?
I don't know if inspiration is the appropriate word, but I went through a divorce. I wasn't inspired to write, but you used the right word of, it was cathartic, so I began journaling through my process. And it really just evolved and became a book because there's so many people who are leading while bleeding, who are going through but really don't have a way to be able to expose your wounds and move forward. It's
interesting you said leading by bleeding. I know that a lot of the very same folks who wrote lifting you up from the GED to the PhD, again, that very medium that you and I are familiar with, bloggers out there weren't so kind to you.
Yes.
You know, in terms of saying, how can he lead with such a public scandal?
Right.
Do you address those critics in your book, or what have you discovered about Jamal Bryant in 2012?
What I've discovered, I went through that in 2007, is I really didn't know until my divorce that I mattered. I didn't know I was on that many people's radar, that the intricacies and the privacy of my marriage became public domain. And it really made me to raise the standard that I do not have the benefit of being a public person with a private life.
No, you don't.
Yeah, so that reality made me really put under scrutiny that being a preacher cannot be what I do, it's got to be how I live. And so I share in that book that it was really my Damascus Road experience of really being saved. I grew up in church, but going through that was really a life-defining moment.
And it was interesting that you said in your first day of preaching along the Gulf Coast that sometimes you have to look at the man in the mirror.
Yeah.
And discover that a lot of the things that you went through, you have to point that finger back in the direction where it points at you.
Yeah. And it's a painful thing that not many people can do because we have co-opted in America a victimization mentality of bringing in the aggregate of all the things that people have done to us, and we never take into account our own bad decisions or choices. And so going through that, realizing I had nobody to blame, left me with no option but to take responsibility.
Well, reality TV, I think, has its place in this country. It was interesting to see that you are the spiritual advisor of Omarosa.
Yes.
What was that like? A lot of ladies out there won't let me get away without giving an opportunity to ask
it was really a great place for me to bring ministry into the marketplace, both with Omarosa and Casey and JoJo, that people who don't go to church, people who have never had a conversation with a pastor outside of being preached to, they've never been talked to. And so a lot of people in church didn't understand it, but a lot of people in the secular society really embraced it and appreciated the pastor that was touchable, reachable, and relatable.
Because they are children of God also.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Last of two questions. You're here in Mobile, Bloody Sunday.
Yes.
You're getting ready to make it to Selma. Is this your first trip to Selma? Well, I have to tell you, get ready. Get ready, get ready.
I'm really excited. I've actually just found out today that my grandfather participated in the march. Just today I found out my grandfather, Bishop Harrison James Bryant, was president of the Baltimore chapter of the NAACP and came down on a bus to march with them. And so I'm excited to walk in his shoes and in his footprint to really take a piece of history. So it's exciting for me.
Way to carry that baton, and do you think that that's part of what we as leaders who are in the public, we've got to continue to educate the generation under us that someone must pick up that baton
well, I think
and finish the work.
We can take a page from the Jewish community that uses as their marching banner, "Never Again," that they always remind the generations what they've endured and how it is that they've survived. And I'm afraid our youth generation has been disconnected, and they just go into a restaurant, ride on Southwest Airlines, go on vacation, and really have no concept of the scope of the sacrifice that was made. And so I'm ashamed yet excited that this is my first time doing the march, and I hope that this will really inspire another generation to become a part.
Well, you are about to take another cathartic journey when you come across the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
Yes.
I think my first time in the reenactment was with Coretta Scott King,
Wow.
leading that congregation.
Yeah.
And you do feel the ancestors
Yeah.
as you take that walk. And it's just very peaceful, and it helps you to know that you're standing on some giant shoulders
Yes.
as you cross that bridge because of King, because of Mrs. King, and so
Yes.
many others. You're standing here as a 21st century minister, and of course your father and your family members paved that way as well.
Absolutely.
World War Me is available at Walmart, I believe,
Yes.
Target, Lifeway, and a lot of people are also downloading it on iPhone.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and
Thank
I
you.
know that I follow you on Twitter as well.
Oh, awesome.
And I have
Thank
to
you.
say that in addition to starting my morning devotion, it's made a tremendous difference for me to have someone to empower
Yes.
and inspire me on that daily walk. So I want to personally thank you for that.
Thank you for following me.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Again, Dr. Jamal Bryant.m4v, Alabama, talking to us as he comes off a tour of a night of empowerment. It's been inspiring indeed.